Hello, and welcome along to the stream tonight. For those of you that are interested, I did mention on Twitter the plan for tonight. So I've been back after a couple of weeks off for various reasons. But tonight the plan is to look at the Cake.Transifex add-in. So Transifex, for those of you who are not familiar, Transifex is a utility tool that helps with the localization of a project into different languages. So we make use of that within the Cake.Recipe project. So over here on the Cake.Recipe project, here's a list of the add-ins that we need to support Cake 2.0 before we can move forward into shipping a new release of Cake.Recipe. So in the previous couple of streams, we've been working on Cake.Appware. We got that fully updated. So now I'm tackling the next one, which is Cake.Transifex. So it's going to be a very similar process to what we followed before. So there will be a little bit of copying and pasting from the previous version, or the previous release of Cake.Appware. But the idea is to slowly work my way through getting it updated. So Augusto has actually already raised an issue for this, which I've now targeted on the next release milestone, which is 2.00. And I've been looking at it just before I came on stream. There's a few things that need to be updated. There's quite a few open pull requests for various dependencies. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to get the basic building blocks set up and updated, and then go from there effectively. So what I've done so far is I'm looking at getting some of the dependencies updated. So the first one that I've done, or the first couple of ones that I've done, is bumping to the next supported Cake version, which is 2.0 within the CS files. I've updated the Cake-Contrib guidelines NuGet package, and I've updated the Cake.addin analyzer NuGet package so that they are at the latest versions available. And I'm going to rely, once I've got this building and running, I'm going to defer to dependabot for some of the other dependencies. So I'm really just looking at getting the main things updated here to get the builds working on the various CI platforms that we have, and then from there, relying on dependabot to get the rest of the things updated based on what's available. So the other one I wanted to add in here was that if we do have a cake.testing, which we do, so it can be bumped to 2.2. And at that point, I think we have everything that should be required to get at least a build working. Hello Nils, how are you? I'm hoping that I'm seeing a lot of errors, but I'm not sure if they are actual errors or if they are just editor config and style cop errors. I mean, we should fix those, but I'm really just trying to get to a point where the build is working just now. So let's just run a build through here and see where we get to. Yeah, hello Nils. Good to see you. I don't know if you heard that part, but yeah, working on the Cake.Transifex add-in as the next port of call. I'm trying to keep things as consistent as possible between this and Cake.Appware, the one that we've just shipped. I've noticed that there's quite a few differences, so trying to spot the difference a little bit. Package Cake.Core is not compatible with NetStandard 2.0, and that is absolutely correct. So that's the other thing that we need to change. So as well as bumping to Cake.2.0, we will be bumping the supported target frameworks. Let's just make these the same as what we did for Cake.Appware. We copy and paste them from over here and get to a point where hopefully it builds. where I saw it. It was here. Here. And then let's run a build again. There was something I was going to ask you about, Nils, but I've forgotten what it was. I thought earlier in the week that I need to speak to Nils about something. I don't remember what it was. Normally I write these things down, but I have written it down. It's on another bit of paper. See if it's on. No, I'll have to go back through my list. Not immediately jumping out. So having changed the target frameworks, we should now hopefully have a build that works. And if that does work, I'll push that up to no, that's JetBrains, that's fine. That's the finder kicking in, I think. That's on my other to-do list to figure that part out. Only you had digital paper. See, I do. I keep going back to physical paper. I don't keep going back to physical paper. There's something about writing on physical paper that agrees with me better. I have a remarkable, like the digital note-taking device, and I tried really hard to use it, and I still do use it, just not as much as I used to. I find myself struggling with it compared to just writing down on a bit of paper. But then the problem is you roll over to the next page and then the stuff on the previous page is forgotten about. Whereas at least with the Remarkable, you can delete things, put them in, copy, paste, all sorts of stuff. But yeah, I think I just need to get better at using it. So I'm hoping that this is going to work, and if it does, I will push it up, and then we could start rebasing some of the PRs that are open for dependabot. So that worked. If we go over to get extensions here and do a refresh, what we'll do is we will update both of these, and we will tag these against this one, which is 206. So this is going to be there 206. Update target frameworks and cake version. We're going to fit in. Back. Excuse me. I hope that didn't flow through. Cake version. In order to import cake. .0.0 needed to change target frameworks to what in this version. Oh, I remember what I was going to ask you about, Nils. I remember what it was. Let me do a slight sideline. I'll push this up just now, though. Get push upstream. Get push origin. Hopefully you saw, Nils, I pushed out a new version of the Cake code extension. And from what I could see, it all just works. So I pushed it, right? But when I was debugging locally from a fresh clone of the repository, I used what was essentially the F5 in Visual Studio Code, which is meant to run the extension. It runs it in the development extension host, and it's meant to make magic happen. But from a fresh clone, if you try just hitting F5, it doesn't do the necessary build step in order to put things into the out folder in order to actually run the extension. So in order to get the extension to debug correctly, I first had to run the cake build, which generated the out folder and put everything into the right place. And from there, I was able to F5 debug the Visual Studio Code extension. Now that seemed a little counterintuitive because I would have hoped that just running F5 would have done everything that was necessary in order to make it work. So I was wondering if we had missed something, or if something had changed in the template that you get when you do a VS Code extension new, or whether we had broken something by making a change to the overall build process. And I was curious if you had seen something on your end when you'd last played with it. It's not a big deal because there's a way around it, but it just seems a little not backward. Backward's the wrong word. But you know what I mean. So yeah, if there was anything that you knew about in that area, that would be good. Oh, so now there's a bunch of new PRs coming through for different dependencies. But the build that I'm interested in was this one. So why did you fail? You failed because on macOS, it said errors. Failed on the .NET Core restore. .NET Core. Right, so we have to bump that too. I had a feeling that we were going to need that. So if I go up to here and look at build configuration under GitHub, is one. Yes, that was my thought as well. But again, in terms of keeping things consistent, what I'd noticed on the var.yaml file is we did, at the minute it got that, and this got that. We still pinned to 18.04 because of Git version for Ubuntu. But let's do that. And that's a build commit. So let's do this. And build, update, build images. Have upgraded to .NET 6.0. We build images. Get. Let's do that. And let's get origin. I saw your comment from Nils, so if I go up to here while that's happening, cd to cake build. What have we got in here? We do have cake.VS Code. I didn't think we had it. Git checkout, develop, git set hard, git fetch stream, git rebase upstream develop, git origin, git clean xfd. Let's get rid of any build artifacts that we've got in there. Let's do a code dot, and I'll let you see what was happening. So in here, what I was attempting to do was just hit F5. So that kicked off the task that was defined in the .vs code folder. It did some stuff, and then it brought up the extension development host, but it ultimately errored out because it said it couldn't activate the extension. And when you look at the error message, so this is the extension development host. I go up to here, and let's say I do F1 and try and find cake. Then it says, fine. But if you look in here, it says ultimately, yada yada yada, cannot find module, blah 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 blah, cake build, cake VS code in the out folder. So if I close the extension development host and look back over here, then sure enough, there is an output folder. It didn't create it yesterday when I was testing it. So why did it still fail then? Let's run it one more time. It didn't work at all when I tried it. Do that again then. Cake. Oh, okay, so it's command returned result, command not found. So it's still failing, but it's not failing with the same error or the same symptoms that I was playing with yesterday. It just simply, the out folder wasn't being created at all. So it's doing something different this time round, but I don't know for what. So are you not seeing that then? I'm going to close that and go back to what I was doing tonight, which was cake. No, I got back up a lot. Cake-Contrib, Cake.Transifex. Okay, so back over here, and we look at here, back to actions, see if our build didn't work this time round. No, bump coverlet. Where did the build go? Build, update. Okay, so it's still failing. Failing on Ubuntu this time. Why is it failing on Ubuntu? Ubuntu is failing because an error occurred when attempting to publish pre-release packages. User credentials unauthorized to dev.azure.com. So that sounds like the password is incorrect. Thank you, Nils. Appreciate that. Now, obviously, Cake.Appware wasn't attempting to push to there, or if it was working. So, what's the difference between our secrets for here and why would our build looking at the builds on Cake.app there on my other screen. Yeah, but even if that's true though, Nils, why would our build that was only last month, or are you saying it's maybe run out within that time frame? I mean, that's entirely possible. Build project. So when we get down to here and it does the publish, where was it published to? For pack, publish pre-release packages, unable to publish. Oh, okay, that makes little to no sense. Why it the preferred? Oh, I see. Okay, that might explain why it's working differently between two, but not why it's failing though still. It failed on Ubuntu, which means it then failed on the other two because it didn't start there. Or the operation was cancelled. So Ubuntu failed, which was the first one. The other two got cancelled because of that. But where does it do the publishing? Publish pre-release packages. So when it's running on Windows, it pushed to oh, it pushed to packages.dev.azure. So it did do it. So it attempted it. So does that mean, okay, so let me see if Pascal is around. Did you change the API key for Azure artifacts? If so, where did updated key go? Let me see if there's an updated password then. I seem to remember reading something on Slack about. Ooh, there's a new one there. Okay, hold on. Let's grab that and let's go into GitHub. Let's see if we can add it to the scripts here. Actions. Source Azure password. It was last updated on the 22nd of September 2021. That's quite close. So let's change this here then to this. Azure password. It has to be that one. Azure password. Get this. So we're in the build.yaml and we are taking the Azure password and we're surfacing that Azure password. And then the Azure is a NuGet source with user password and source. Okay, fine. So let's do an update to this dude. Okay, enter a new value, paste, save changes. Okay. That's okay. That's so let's remind. I think I found smiley face. Okay, so if we go back to here and back to here, let's rerun this guy again. Rerun. See if that makes a difference. And hopefully if this works, then we'll at least be at a building point that I can then look at the pull requests. So the pull requests have all been updated by dependabot because there was a lot that were outdated by the look of it. So it's gone through and updated them all. Good. And it did that as a result of me making commits into the develop branch. Click. See if we can output. Can. But yeah, did you try Nils, the latest Cake extension for VS Code? It seemed to work when I run it after publishing it. So, but I didn't do extensive testing of it, I'll be honest. Oh, wait. Publish pre-release packages. This was the step that failed last time. Hopefully. Adding sources. Publishing to packages.dev. I think that worked. I didn't see any red text. But got past the stage that on it now. I tried to it. So I didn't mean that. I meant in general. Have you tried the 2.1.0 version, or are you saying that's your way to install that? Because it was purely based on the PR that Martin put up. I just kind of winged it and did some of the dependabot updates that went along with it. That looks like it got further. Good. And I think then that's core part of that one done. Then what we do, start looking at some of the other updates. Frost. Lots of green for the code QL stuff, which is good. Builds are now going green where they were all red before. So I think because I merged your PR that you put into the extension as well, which was for adding add-ins as a preprocessor directive, which wasn't working because of uppercase and lowercase problems. So I'm hoping that that has been resolved now. and I know that Matthias has been working on changes and updates to Cake itself, getting ready to ship a new version there. I merged some PRs that he had done this morning. I think all of the remaining issues on the 2.3 milestone have been completed. So it would be good to get that out, and then there is a version 3 coming up that's got a bunch of breaking changes that need to get looked at as well. Adding .NET 7 support, moving .NET 5, task framework moniker, lots of yeah, and we'll probably have a meeting within the team to discuss everything that's going into the 3.0. I know there were some discussions had previously. We need to go back and get a final decision on. But that'll be a job for a different day. Okay, so the macOS build ran. Nils is saying that he might know what the problem with the local debugging in Cake.VS Code is. That would be good. Happy to try something on stream if there's a suggestion there. And as a point of clarity, just thinking about it, when I was debugging it or testing it out, it would have been on the Mac. So if there's a difference there in terms of how it's done on Windows compared to on Mac, that might that's something I could test out in both cases. But things always take ages when you're waiting on them. Close this out just now and come back to builds on. Group finder, package, read issues. Looks like it's getting very close. Oh, it has done it. Okay, cool. So it has, but it hasn't. There we go. Right. So that worked. So the one that I was playing with getting updated was this one. So to branch the dependabot one, because change that up. That to phpr list, phpr checkout, caching one, which was 9. Oh, why is there 214? That are that? This bumps it to a. What did we decide? Did we decide that we wanted specific versions of the actions or the more open-ended, just 3.0? Look elsewhere. We have got specific versions in play. Yes. Okay, let's do this then. Let's go ahead and add this one. So copy link address. Say closing this PR favor of close that, and I'm going to I added this one to the milestone thinking that I would pull this one in, but it looks like we will go with the other one. In which case, this one is a dependabot one, whereas the other one had been raised by a community member. So in that case, I should be able to do this command, which will hopefully rebase it by itself. Force pushed at 21 minutes ago, so let's just do then. We do 4.9, and that's coming from. So that's coming off. It is coming off of develop. So in which case, it is just the PR branches we're waiting on. So we don't need to rebase. What we do need to do is view this. So that bumped it to there. Happy with that. Happy with that. Happy with that. Happy with that. Then if we do this, let's add this to milestone. Already got the build label, which is what we were after. Really all we're looking for are those are from the ones that we removed. So those are never going to come back. So let's just merge this as is then, because it built on macOS latest, it built on Ubuntu, and it built on. Let's just do this and say wash and merge, because I'm allowed to do that then. Click a button. Yes. Do it. So Nils is saying in the chat room there, found it. There is one manual step that needs to be performed before work tests can start on Cake VS Code. npm CI is required. Okay. What does npm CI do? npm CI I don't know what npm CI is. Either I've got an older version of npm that doesn't have that, or it's something else. If I do know what it is, I've forgotten. Like npm I, but does no updates. Oh, I see. So that must be something we have on the Cake build then, which is why it works as part of the overall build, but not directly within the F5 debugging. Yes? Let's go back over here. And all of these are now getting rebased, I think. Are they? Okay, cool. So this is where I get this is where I get not annoyed, that's the wrong word. It's it's one of the things that I love and hate about dependabot. So dependabot has figured out that there's been a new update to develop. But because I've got 6 open PRs from dependabot, it's went and forced or done a rebase and a force push against all of these. But I can only pick one of them before dependabot will run off again and do a rebase and a force push on all the other ones. I'd really like to just tackle them in order. So normally what I would do is I would go and kill the build in actions related to the one that's I'm going to do next. So I might just pick the first one, for example. But because of the sheer number of builds that have kicked off, it's hard to know which one's which. So I might just let them run through, but it seems like a waste of minutes on the build, to be honest. It would be nicer if I could just say, we'll do this one next, without automatically updating it. And I don't know if there's a way of doing that. If there is, I would love to hear about it. But for now, I'm just going to let it do its thing. So let's use the GitHub Actions one next, and we'll wait for these checks to finish. So going back to what Nils was saying, so going back to what I said before, so it's running, we do have it running as part of the Cake build, but not within the extensions running the debug of the extension. So roughly said, it downloads all the npm dependencies. So does that mean that there's going to be an incoming PR into the Cake VS Code? Repository then. Ooh, sounds like it might already be there. No, there's been a dependabot raised. I wondered if there was going to be one from Nils as well. I'm sure there will be soon. But what I think Nils is referring to is, oh, that's within the code recipe, so I won't be able to show you that. But I'm assuming what Nils is going to do is he's going to add in an additional thing here to make it all work. So we'll wait and see what happens. Some of these are coming back as successful. That's still got... Is that a setting on the repository? Or where is that coming up? So Nils is saying he has to think about how to do it next. Which is fine. To go off screen here a little bit, just to have a play with Cake.Transifex settings, because I think there's maybe a build check that yeah, it's saying that. Oh, I see. Yeah, no, what was confusing, Nils, was before you got little checkboxes beside each available build, but now you have to type it into the find window before it comes up. So it's currently still got a required check for Mac 1015, which we don't have anymore. So I'm going to remove that, and I'm going to remove the Windows 2019, and I'm going to add in the build for macOS latest and any source, so it's the same. And I'm going to add in build for Windows latest with any source, so it's the same. And then I'm going to save changes. but that's unlikely to take effect on this PR, but it may flow through into the next one. So the 7 successful, the 2 expected required ones are not there. So I'm going to say I can go ahead and, I don't think I actually reviewed this one yet, but we went from 19 to 13 on there, fine, and we went from 9 to 13 on there. So let's say, looks good to me, approve that. Let's just go ahead and say merge without that, and merge. Okay. So then the dance is going to happen over again. So each of these is now going to get rebased and force pushed again. And I'm going to sit and wait for this one to do what it needs to do. You see? That was 7 minutes ago. So I would have expected this to do, yes, there it goes. So dependabot is now rebasing that again, and then we'll wait for the successful checks. And at this point, I'm hopeful that the 2 expected checks will get removed once the force push happens. Surly Dev is asking what's the difference between a rebase and a merge. Good question. What's the easiest way to show that? Let's go in here. That's a nice little sideline where we're waiting on something. So let's do cd temp, and let's do a new folder called Surly Dev. So let's cd into there, and then let's do a git in it. So we're going to create a git repository in here. Okay. So if we were to do a git commit -- allow empty, so we've got a commit there, right? Or we're doing a commit, and we'll do some stuff, right? So let's just start visualizing this a little bit. So we're on our master branch, and that's the commit that we've just had. Okay, so let's make this a little bit more realistic, and let's do code dot, and let's create an actual file here. So let's go into this Surly Dev folder, and we'll create a readme.md, and then we'll put in here first entry. Okay. So then we'll do a commit that is first entry, right? So again, to visualize that, we've now got 2 commits on this. Another good question. Okay, so git x is git extensions. So it's a git UI. So it's similar to fork or GitHub desktop or Git Kraken or whatever Git UI you happen to be using. It's not as Git K, yes, similar to that one. So Git EX is the Windows version of the really, it's quite a simplistic, stripped down Git user interface. It doesn't have all the fancy stuff of some of the newer UIs, but it's what I kind of grew up using. It's what I continue to use. So Git EX. So on Windows, I just do Choco install Git extensions, and that's what I'm using here. So in terms of what we've now got a single file that's on the master branch, and I've made a change to it, right? So in terms of visualizing what we've got, if I were to go back to that repository and do a git checkout -b feature A, right? Let's create a new feature branch. So I'm on that branch, and back in here, if I go back to my readme.md file, and in here I put second entry, right? So back over here, just because this is how I do commits, or our way of doing a commit, I'm going to stage that commit, and I'm going to say second entry. Can't type today. This is kind of off the cuff as well. So I've now got second entry. So I've done that on the feature A branch. But if I go and switch back to my master branch, so if I do git checkout master, right, and I go back to my code folder, that second entry is not there anymore because I did that on the feature branch. Yeah. No space. Git extensions all one word. So if I do actual second entry, call it actual second entry, right? And again, if I commit that, so second entry, the fact that I'm doing this in VS Code doesn't make any difference. I'm just doing what's at hand. So in terms of visualizing that, I've now got a divergence of the graph. So we went from first entry, we've gone to 2 second entries. One's on our feature A branch and one's on the master branch. So if I did a merge, what will happen is it will attempt to reconcile the differences between that divergence and put them together, right? So if we go to here and I do a git merge, let's just do a git merge feature A, right? It's going to have a merge conflict. And it's going to have a merge conflict because I put the same line on the same file and I need to put them together, right? Now, the way that I would typically reconcile that would be using something like kdiff, because that's the tool that I tend to use. So this is me doing a 3-way merge at this point to say, well, putting all the differences are, the first one here is showing me these are where the files both came from. These are the 2 changes that happened both in my feature branch and both in my second branch. And I need to reconcile them to put them back together, right? So I'm going to say that on this merge conflict, I want to pick both B and C because I want to take the changes from both sides, stitch them together, right? So I save that and then I save that. Then I can do a git merge -- continue. And at that point, I'm going to have things back together. Now, I've still got a change. I've got an outstanding change here, which is a .org file, which kdiff created for me. I normally put .org files into my git ignore file, so I don't need to worry about them. So I can just actually remove that file because I don't need it. And then we're back to a point, right? So if we go back to our graph, what we'll see is we had our first entry, we had our graph divergence on the feature branch, and then we had our update on the master branch, and then we merged the 2 things together. So we've taken that divergence and we've put them back together, right? So that's what happens in terms of the merge, right? If we do that again in the scenario where we're going to do a rebase, so let's do git checkout -b feature B, right? So I'm now on my feature branch. I'm going to make another change. So let's go back to my readme.md file. And I'm going to put, here's my third entry. Right, so let's keep this thing going along. So I'll do a commit there. That is my third entry. Commit. And then I'll switch back to my master branch. So git checkout master. And then back over here, I'll do another third entry, which is the actual third. Doesn't matter. Typing is hard. So then over here, I'll do my third entry. Okay. And then to visualize that, we're at the same point as we were before, right? So if I do a refresh here, I'm at a divergent point again, right? Now the difference this time around is we're going to do a rebase of the feature branch on top of the current head of the master branch. So the difference here is rather than doing a merge to reconcile the difference, I'm going to rebase this commit or this branch on the current head of the master branch. So in other words, what I'm going to do is I'm going to rebase, I'm going to pick up this commit or the commits on this branch, and I'm going to replay them onto the top of the head of the master branch. So I'm rewriting history, and that's why you'll hear folks say that rebase is a destructive operation, and it absolutely is, because doing a git rebase is rewriting the commits from a different head. And as a result of that, because of the way Git works, and because of the SHA that Git creates, it uses the base point of the commit as the starting point for the SHA. So if I literally pick this commit up and put it onto the head in the master branch, I need to rewrite the history, right? But in the scenario that I've got here, where I've got a feature branch and I just want to keep it up to date with the current head of the master branch, a rebase operation is absolutely a valid way of doing things. So if I do that, what that looks like at the command line is I want to do a git checkout. I want to check out my feature branch, which is feature A, and I want to do a git rebase. And you need to give the rebase a target, i.e., which branch do you want to rebase on? Now, I'm still going to get the merge conflict, and it's going to be a slightly more scary merge conflict, but it's the exact same process. I've now got to reconcile those. Sorry, I said A, but I did B. Sorry, apologies. So I still need to merge. I still need to reconcile that merge conflict. But the rebase is slightly different in the sense that you're now looking at things in the context of the things that I did. What did I do on feature B, and how can I replay them on the top of the head of the current master branch? So again, if I use git merge tool, I'll still get my three-way split, but I'm now looking at the context of, well, here's the thing that I added on the master branch, and here's the thing that I added on the feature B branch. Now, it's a contrived example here, but you can imagine a situation where what I would be looking at on the right-hand side, the third one, is, well, what are the things that I added to here, and how can I put them onto the top of the head of the master branch? So again, for the sake of this one, I'm just going to go B and C again, so they're exactly the same. And that'll take me back to the command line. And at that point, I will have a origin file again. So I can remove the README origin file. And I can continue the rebase. So I can do a git rebase, -- continue. That's the same, essentially the same operation as the git merge -- continue that I did previously. But the important thing in my head, so I'm not going to hit refresh just yet. So I'm going to ask you to visualize what we've got here, right? So currently we've got a divergence in the graph. From this commit here, we did the feature B branch, and then we did the master branch. But now we've literally picked this third entry up from feature B, and I've replayed it on the top of the head of the master branch. So when I refresh this, it's going to look slightly different, because now I have taken this commit and replayed it off the top of the head of the master branch, rather than having this divergence to then come in and do a merge commit. So then if I complete the merge of feature B into master, so if I do a git checkout master, and then I do a straight git merge of the feature B branch, oh, I typed that wrong, feature B, that's going to no-op because I rebased feature B on top of the head of the master branch, so it's a no-op to put it into there. So the resulting Git history, in my opinion, is a lot cleaner at this point, because you don't have these interwoven commits, one of which was on the master branch, one of which was on the feature branch. What you've got is, I refer to this as a nobule. I don't know what else to call it, but this little nobule here is then a much cleaner way of seeing what goes on and what went on in the feature branch, rather than having to look at this and say, oh, there was a commit over here, and there's a commit over here, and there might have been another one depending on the size of the feature, etc. It's much easier in my head to reason about this little divergence rather than this one, which has multiple other commits that are in there. So if you're interested at all about keeping your history of your graph, your Git graph, clean, then a rebase becomes really useful. in my opinion. But again, it is a completely destructive operation in the sense that the SHA that was associated with this commit, it got changed as a result of the rebase that I did on the master branch. Whew, that was a lot of words. Hopefully that makes sense. If not, let me know and I will try again. I'm going to jump back to my PR over here, and I'm going to. This was the one that I was looking at, which was superlinter. The 9 successful, 2 expected. So still got the 2 expected, which I've now taken off. So they're still hanging about. If I do squash and merge here, I've actually approved this one. I don't think I did. So let's go in here and look at what was happening. And let's do a, looks good to me. Approve, submit. And I'm going to go and force that with a squash and merge because I can. And then we're one more PR down. Oh, I haven't been assigning these to the milestone. So I should go back and do that on the 2.0 milestone. And then for the close PRs, let's make sure that one that I did in between, that one also needs the 2.0 zone. I'm seeing your messages, Surly Dev. I'll come back to in a second. So let's go back to the open ones. And let's do this one next. So comments from Surly Dev. Okay, that kind of makes more sense. Clearer than any rebase example I've ever read. Thank you. Oh, yes. So as long as the rebasing is done locally before uploading, it's okay, question mark. Before doing git push, not uploading. So there's a little bit of a caveat there. So let's use an example, right? So let's go to, I will answer that question with an example. So let's go to cake, right? So if we were to look at, say, this PR, so let's move away from the test example that we've got and let's CD into the GitHub repository that is Cake. And let's look at Cake here. Okay, so git checkout. I'm going to get myself onto the develop branch. I'm going to make sure that I am up to date with the upstream, which is the source repository. So for me, I'm going to do a rebase there as well. Now, this is where it gets slightly confusing because this rebase operation I'm doing here is not a destructive operation because all I'm doing is I'm updating my local develop branch to the head of the upstream develop branch, which I will always be behind on. But all I'm doing there is replaying the commits that are on the upstream develop onto my local head. So it's really just a case of essentially cherry picking the PRs, and not the PRs. Sorry, let me start again. Really all I'm doing there is the equivalent of doing a cherry pick of the commits that are on the upstream develop onto my local develop. So this is not a destructive operation because as far as my local develop is concerned, it's just accepting those incoming 30 commits that are on the upstream develop. That rebase operation is not a destructive one, right? So for me, I'm then going to do a git push origin, but that's because of the way that I've got my repository set up. So if I look at git remote -v, not -c, I tend to have an origin, which is my fork, and the upstream, which is the original repository. So that rebase operation that I just did there was about getting my fork up to date with the latest upstream, which is the original repository, right? So then if we look at, I don't know if you're familiar with the GitHub command line, but what I'm going to do now is I'm going to do a GHPR list. And what it's going to tell me, what it's going to list out is what are the open PRs that are available on the upstream repository, on the original repository. So if I were to look at this one, which is 3962, if I do a git PR checkout 3962, what that will do is it will grab that PR branch and it'll clone it locally and it'll check it out onto my local repository. So I'm now on that PR branch. And if I look at git extensions on here, See all these things here? These are the nobules I referred to, because we use the exact same approach on the Cake repository. So every time there's a nobule, it's because we've rebased a PR, and the context of that PR is within that nobule, right? So that's why I like it. So this PR here is an earlier PR that hasn't been rebased yet. So before we would want to merge that PR into our Cake repository, we will want to rebase it on the current head of the master branch. And I think we've got our Git repository set up so that it actually won't allow us, or it'll shout to us, yes. So this thing here, this is saying this branch is out of date with the base branch. So we actually wouldn't be able to merge the PR branch until it was updated to the current head of the master branch, the develop branch. Right? So if I were to go back to the command line, and while I'm on the 3867, I can do a git rebase on the head of the develop branch. Now, for most PRs, that should essentially be a no-op, because hopefully the things that have been worked on the PR are in isolation compared to the other PRs that went in. Now, ultimately, there will potentially be conflicts, but we just have to. Those are the ones that we have to resolve. But if you're working in isolation on a kind of isolated bit of code, then the chances of this causing a merge conflict are far fewer. So if I just give it a try, I'm going to git rebase develop, and that went through without. There's no merge conflict there to worry about. So if we go back to Git extensions, this is where that PR branch used to be. Now, as a result of doing that operation that I just did, if I refresh this, 3867 now comes off the head of the develop branch, right? So it's now ahead where all my nobules were grayed out before. They're now lit up because I've taken that branch that I was on and I've physically moved it up to the head of the develop branch, right? So this is where it starts to get a little bit tricky, because if I wanted to pull that change into my upstream repository, I have to push that change up, right? But I can't. Or if I try and do a git push at this point, Git's going to go, well, no, you're being silly. You can't do that, right? That's not going to work because we've rewritten history. That commit, which was the changing of the attribute of the changing of the name of the attribute, that commit got rewritten. So normally what you have to do is you'd have to do a git push -f, the force push to the repository. And that's where the rebase operation, because it's a destructive operation, becomes tricky. Because you're then forcing the rewriting of a history onto a potentially shared branch. So let's say that you were the person behind this PR. So this PR came in from, I forget who the dude it was. This PR came in from Ivan Bibic, right? So if I were to force push this PR branch to Ivan Bibic, then they would have to reset their branch to the current head of what I've just force pushed it to. Otherwise, we would get all sorts of problems going on. So that's where it becomes tricky, in the sense that I would only ever do this operation, git push -f, if I was literally a way to merge that PR in. So it allows me to do the work, get it rebased on the current head of the develop branch. I can force push it back to the PR branch. All the CI builds will start kicking off and they'll do their work. And assuming everything is happy, and I've reviewed it and I'm happy, then I can do an immediate merge of the PR, and Ivan Bibic is none the wiser in the sense that I did the force push. Or I could ask them to do the rebase and force push, and then everybody's happy as well. Now, I'm not going to do the git push -f just now, because I'm not in a position to merge this PR. I'm not in a position to merge this PR because this PR is a breaking change, and we're not going to do that until the next release of the next major version of Cake. But earlier today, I went through that exact same process with a number of Mateus's PRs. So each of the PRs that came in from Mateus here, each of these ones. So if I were to go and look at, say, this one, then you'll see that I did exactly what I just spoke about. But I'm trying to remember which one it was. So let's grab this one as an example. So yeah, it's here. So I saw this PR from Matthias. I did a GHPR checkout. I did a git rebase on the develop branch, and then I force push this to Matthias's branch. The CI builds all kicked off. The CI builds all passed. Matthias had enabled the auto merge functionality within GitHub. So as a result of it being at the head of the develop branch, it being approved, and all the CI builds passing, it automatically merged. And that's what gives us the nice clean history in terms of what's the context of the changes that would be going into the branch. So, and you're saying, oh, that's beautiful. You should see the tram lines we have on some of our repos. And I've been there. I'm right there with you. And I, for one, much prefer these nobules, because like I say, when you've got maybe multiple commits on a PR, you can see that this is the unit of work. This is the context of the thing that we're changing within the scope of this. Now, we also go further on the Cake project, where we attribute in our commit message, we attribute the issue that it's associated with as well. So on GitHub, these commit messages light up as being associated with that issue. So there's a couple of things in there in terms of a small amount of process that you can add into your Git workflow that means that certain things light up in GitHub and just make things much easier to reason about when you're looking at the history of a repository. Now, that's not to say that we always do things via PRs. There will be some times when we do a commit directly into the develop branch. And there are some times where there are a little bit of tram lines. But what's going on here is when we're shipping a release. So on the Cake repository, we follow the Git flow branching strategy, where we'll take things that are on the develop branch and move them over to the main branch. So you'll see a little bit of tramline artifacting when we do the merge between develop and master, or develop and main rather. But for most cases or most scenarios, on the updated or what we're currently working on, i.e. the develop branch, it's this nice clear linear history. So we can look at this and say, oh, what's going out in the next release? Oh, well, it's 9347 or it's 935. You know what I mean? It's a lot easier to reason about, in my opinion, about what's going on. So that's why we rebase. It is a destructive operation. It can cause problems if you're working on a shared branch on the repository, and you will need to do a git push-f. If you are having to do a git push so let's go over here, git push-h. If you are having to do a git push, I would encourage you to work with not the straight up -f, but you might want to look at doing force with lease. The idea there is that the force push won't allow you to do the force push if the status of that branch has diverged since you pulled it locally, did some changes, and then pushed it. So there's a little bit of what's the word I'm looking for? A safety net there, that if you do the git force with lease, it won't allow you to overwrite and do a destructive operation if something's knowingly been changed since you did the force push locally or the rebase locally. Whew. So multiple commits on a branch will just show up as extra blobs in the nobules. Yes, and I should have shown you that. So let's go back over to here. So cd ctemp surly dev. Let's just show that in action. So git checkout Bob from master. So over here, let's do Bob, and then we'll commit that as Bob. And then let's do another one here that's Bill, and we'll commit that as Bill. So we've now got 2 commits. So if we do git ex again, so we've got master. So master is, oh, I've done that on the wrong branch. What an idiot. Okay, so let's do cherry picking in action then. So git checkout. Oh, I didn't actually create the Bob branch. That's what it was. Git -b Bob from master. let's show cherry picking in action. So let's do git cherry pick. So at this point, I'm going to cherry pick those 2 commits and put them onto the branch that I wanted them on. So let's do F20E2, and let's do a git cherry pick. Oh, I've done them the wrong way. That's not what. Hold on. I'm not sorry. I'm going off piece of what I've trying to show. So let's git cherry pick. I did them in the wrong order. So let's do cherry pick of the first one, which is, or did I do them? Oh no, hold on. I'm being completely silly. You know what? Let's not worry about it. I'm getting so now I'm on Bob. So let's where are we? So Bob's there. All right, okay. So let's do here. So let's do Bill again. Bill. And let's do Ted. Ted. Okay. Getting a little bit ahead of myself, obviously. Okay, let's see if we can visualize this thing. Okay, so over here on the Bob branch, we've now got Bill and Ted, but our master branch is still back here. So if we do git checkout master, and then back into there, and we'll do another last one in here, right? So save that, last one, there we go. So here, we've got a divergence again. We've got these 2 commits on the Bob branch, and we've got a divergence on master. So we want to rebase that. So we're on the git checkout Bob, and we're going to do a git rebase of the master branch. So we're going to pick that up. We're going to merge conflict because we've done the same thing. We've changed the same file in multiple places. We'll do git merge tool to reconcile all of that. So we'll just pick B and C. Doesn't really matter about the actual merge. So let's do that, and then we can do a git rebase continue, right? And then we'll save that. So what will happen now is that those 2 because I've got a second commit. So now, so this is the interactive rebase in action now. Is it's applied the difference for the first commit, and now I've got another merge conflict for the second commit. So I can do a git merge tool again, and then it'll ask me to apply the second commit that we did, which is fine. So again, it doesn't matter what the end result is, but we'll just say that we're happy with it. We can get into that in another day. So then if we do git rebase continue again, then that's the second commit being applied. So now we've got an org file that we don't want or need, so we can go ahead and delete that. Right. So now if we go and visualize the history, now we've got the master branch and we've got the 2 commits that we did on the Bob branch ready to be a nobule all by itself to merge in. But then that brings up the next thing with about a rebase, is that you can do an interactive rebase. Have you heard of that terminology? And if you have, then we'll cease. But if you haven't, then seeing an interactive rebase in action can be a useful thing as well. So I'll wait for a response on that one. Okay, so let's imagine the scenario that we're on this feature branch and I did an end of day commit here, and then the next day I came along and said, well, I've finished off that work, but I've got all these changes. But what I want to do is I want to squash them into a single commit that just shows all the work. So at the minute I've got 2 commits, and I could just merge them in and I would get a 2 commit nobule going in. But imagine the scenario that actually the work that's in those 2 commits are the concrete unit of work is a single commit, and it makes sense for it to be a single commit. I might want to restructure the commits to put them together, and that's where an interactive rebase comes into play. So if I come over here, I can do the same thing again. I can do a git rebase on master, but I can make it an interactive one by adding the -i flag. So it does the exact same operation, and that exact same operation is it's going to take those commits and it's going to replay them against the current head in the master branch. Now in our current scenario, that's a no-op because we're already at the head of the master branch. So there's nothing else for it to do. But by adding in the -i flag, we're telling Git that I want to do additional stuff. Now what you're seeing here is the default way that an interactive rebase works. So what you're seeing here, these top 2 lines, is essentially an instruction list of what you're asking Git to do. Okay? Hold on. But if it's not finished at that point, we can just finish it later and do further commits and then squash them all together. But if it's not finished at that point, we can just finish it later and do further. You absolutely can, but like I say, the way that I structure commit sometimes is I'll do a bunch of stuff and I'll get to kind of a natural stopping point, and I don't want to then have to undo some stuff. So I'll do a commit that's maybe like an intermediate commit. I'll go off and do a few other related things, but I didn't want to lose the scope of where I was over here. And then I might do another commit, and then I might do another commit, and then I might do another commit. But in terms of what I want to check into the repository, I don't want or need to know the history of how I got to my final staging point. But what I might want to do is I might want to say, well, see all those things there? I just want to squash them down. Now you can do that through GitHub, but sometimes when I'm doing an interactive rebase, I might want to take a commit that was done over here and move it to in front of the other commit. Or I might want to take the first commit and the third commit and put them together, but leave the second commit in between, right? An example of an extra debugging code that is included in various commits. Yes, absolutely, right? So let's make this a little bit more of an interesting example, right? So let's do a third commit in here. So let's do, this is not necessarily what I planned to be tonight, but this has been quite fun. So let's do don't want this one, right? So let's do don't want this one. And we will do that as a, oh, I didn't save it, that's why. Let's do this. So we'll do a commit. No, it's fine. I mean, this is what happens on my streams. It's fine. I don't mind, right? So let's visualize this. So this commit here, I've now got 3 commits on my Bob branch. So let's say that there's a couple of things. Let's say I didn't want this anymore, right? Let's say that this was a debug commit, or it was a commit that I didn't want. There's a couple of ways that you could remove that commit from the branch, but one of the ways is through an interactive rebase, right? So if we go back down to here and run that command that we were doing before, which was the interactive rebase, then what pops up is a text editor. And that text editor is a list of instructions that you're giving to Git about what you want to do, right? So what it's saying here, so if I put these side by side, I'm telling Git that I want to pick the commit that has that SHA and the commit message bill, and I want to stick it on the head of the master branch. And then I want to pick the commit that is this with the commit this, and I want to stick that on the top of the next one. And then I want to pick the commit that is this with the commit message of this, and I want to stick that on top of that one as well. So it's literally an instruction set. I want you to do this, I want you to do this, and I want you to do this, right? But as per the comments that are here, there are other operations that you can do, i.e. you can do a pick, or you can do a reword, or you can do an edit, you can do a squash, you can do a fix-up. There's lots of them, right? But let's imagine that let's start off by I wanted to reword this commit message because the commit message wasn't quite right. So in that scenario, I can actually change the pick here to reword or just R. I'll spell it out completely. So what we're doing here is we're changing the instruction set that we're giving to Git by doing it as an interactive rebase. So I'm still doing the pick of the bill commit, I'm still doing the pick of the TED commit, but I want to reword the don't do this one commit, right? So if I save that that will then hand that instruction set, or if I save and close that, that will hand the instruction set to Git and do everything that I asked it to do. So it's jumped into another text editor for the commit that was the one that I asked it to reword. So in this scenario, I could do, well, let's say I wanted to use the nomenclature to associate it with a GitHub thing. So that's the nomenclature that we use on commit messages. So in this editor, this editor is giving me the ability to structure the commit message in the same way that I would do if I was doing it for the first time. So if I go ahead and save that and close that, that interactive rebase finishes. But if I go back into my visualization tool and I hit refresh, I'm going to still have the build commit, I'm going to still have the TED commit, but the wording, or the wording of the commit that was that one, has now changed. I've done it as an interactive rebase. I've made a modification to that thing, right? So then we can go further. So let's say we actually want these two things to go together into a single commit, because this was my end of day commit, this was my next morning doing a bunch of stuff to finalize some stuff, and let's say I wanted to put those two things together. So let's do that. So let's do an interactive rebase. Let's go over here and do that interactive rebase again. So I've now got my instruction set again. I want to pick the first one, I want to pick the second one, and I want to pick the third one. So I'm going to use a slightly different one here, and I'm going to use the fix up option, which is saying it's like squash, but keep only the previous commits log message, right? So if I do an F, or a fix up here, the instruction set now is take the first one that has got Bill on it, and then take the second one and fix it up. So what that means is it's going to fix up this commit, it's going to take this commit, and it's going to stitch it together with this one, and it's going to keep the commit message that was associated with the original one. Okay, so this one's a little bit harder to visualize, but let's go with it. So my instruction set is pick, fix up, and then pick. So I save that, and I close it, and it's going to get back at the command line. It's going to say successfully rebase and update ref's head, right? So if we go back to our visualization, so we've got Bill, we've got Ted, and we've got this one. In the Bill commit, if we look at the diff, it added last one and Bill, and then in this one, it did Bill and Ted. If I refresh now, I'm only now going to have two commits. I'm going to have the original Bill commit, but now it's got both the changes from the TED commit and the Bill commit in a single commit. It's squashed it down, it's flattened it down, and it's made that into a single commit. And then this is, well, now you need to reword that commit because it doesn't make sense anymore. So you come back in here and you say, well, actually, I want to reword, not that one, I want to pick that one. And then I want to reword this one because it doesn't make sense anymore. So I'm going to reword that. And I'm going to say, reword that. And I'm going to say, well, actually, what I want to do is I want to put that in there. I want to put in one and actually do the work. Save that. Close that. Come back over here and visualize that change. So I've now, that's the build commit that was there. I've now reworded that. It's still got the same content. The content of the commit is still the same as it was before, but all I've done is change the commit message. But now it's starting to make sense in terms of what I want to check in. But then this one, oh, I still don't want that one. That was the one, that was my debug commit. So what you can do as a final step is my interactive rebase. Let's do one more. So this instruction set is pick that one, and then this one I don't want. So you can use either drop. So I could change this pick to drop, at which point it would remove the commit from the instruction set, meaning it won't be there anymore. Or you could just delete it. Is the other way of doing it, because the instruction set, if it doesn't have the item on the instruction set, then it won't pick it, right? But I'm going to leave it in just so we can see it in action. My instruction set now is pick and drop. Save that and close that. So before we hit refresh, currently we've got two commits on the master branch, or two commits on the Bob branch off of master branch. One is actually do the work, and one is I don't want this. So now, having picked this one and dropped this one, if I refresh it, What I'm left with is a single commit that we squash down from the Bill and Ted commit, and that's the commit that's now going to merge into my master branch. But all of that, I'll reiterate all of this again, all of that were destructive operations on the Bob branch. So if I'm working locally, have at it. You can rebrace that local branch as often or as few times as you want to structure the commits in the way that makes sense for you. But as soon as you need to share that branch, you will need to do a git push-f to your upstream or to your origin, wherever you're also storing that branch. But if you're working locally on your own feature branch, before pushing it up as a pull request or whatever, do interactive rebases all you want, right? And then to finish that off, the example was then git checkout master, and then git merge the Bob branch. Then when we visualize that, we get a nobule that's got a single commit with the merge into the master branch. Whew. Oh, look, squirrel. Yeah, I was gone. Sorry. That was an interesting squirrel, though. I enjoyed that one. Can you edit the commit message at that point, e.g. line 3? Okay, yep. So we were on the same page. Absolutely, you can. Awesome stuff. Hi, everybody. Hey, Brave Cobra. So yeah, interactive rebases. I first learned about them in 2013, and when I was taught about them, I was like, this is just magic. This is literally someone is doing stuff that you shouldn't be able to do. But so there is a little bit of a learning curve in terms of understanding what's happening and understanding what's going on. But once you grok it, and once you understand what's going on and looking at the different options that you've got during that interactive rebase, whether you want to drop it, reword it, squash it, fix up, etc., I can honestly say I use an interactive rebase on a daily basis because we work on feature branches normally in the places that I work. And then that feature branch is essentially mine. So I'll do an end of day commit, or I'll finish a scope of work, I'll do a commit, I'll throw away something else, I'll bring it back in. But the end result is I want a nice, clean, concise history of what I'm actually wanting to contribute to the project. And that's where, if we look back at the Cake project, that's where these nobules, as I call them, come in. Because each one of those is a discrete PR that has an issue associated with it for traceability purposes. And we can see quite clearly everything that went on in that commit. So it's a nice constrained bit of work. We can see exactly what went on. It's associated with an issue, and it's a nice, clean, and easy to reason about. If you've got the interwoven tram lines, I call them the Guitar Hero strings. If you've ever played Guitar Hero on the Wii, that's what I refer to them as. I much prefer to look at it in this sort of structure because it's much easier to think about what went on, why it happened, etc. So there's a little bit of work there. And there's a little bit of not shoehorning, that's the wrong term. There's a little bit of guiding the commit or the series of commits into the shape that you want them. And it can be infuriating sometimes if you have got merge conflicts. But in my opinion, the end result is a history in your Git repository that is much easier to look at and think about what went on as you need to look back on history. Brave Cobra saying, I've got a little bit of a chocolatey question. Could it be that the paging in the GUI is off? It says 1 of 187, but it shows nothing after page 13. Short answer, Brave Cobra, is maybe, but it's also potentially the upstream repository as well. So is this CCR that you're looking at, or is this an internal repository that you've got of your own? Because we have seen issues in both of those cases. They're different issues, but we have seen issues depending on whether it's CCR you're hitting or whether it's an internal repository. And what it comes down to is, well, I'll wait for a response on that before we go into it too much more. But hopefully that was useful, Surly Dev. If you haven't noticed, I sort of like talking about this stuff. So if you did have any follow-up questions, just let me know. I have no repo of yours, so you are using CCR. So unfortunately, what happens with CCR is that there is caching issues, let's say, right? I won't go into the detail of the infrastructure that we currently have, but basically, because of the sheer volume of requests that we get in and the amount of data that we transfer through CCR, we heavily cache a lot of stuff. But the side effect of that is that sometimes, depending on which web host you're hitting, and which web host, in this case, the GUI is hitting, it gets the wrong information. And all I can say is there's very little I can do about that right now, but I am literally working on trying to fix it. So I don't have a good answer for you, other than it's a known issue that we can't do much about right now, but I am actively looking on fixing it. So hopefully we'll have better news for you later. So Charlie Dev, that was great, thank you, no problem. Quick question, promise. What tools are you using for Git merge tool and Git diff tool? That's a great question. So what I'll do is I will go and point you over to here. Git 13 OSS. Chocolatey packages. Where's my Git config? My Git config is here. And if I go into tools and then Chocolatey install, so I can give you copy that. I'm not in Twitch chat, so I can't actually send it. But so if you go here, Surly Dev, then this is my Git configuration that I use on all my machines. I just do a Choco install, Git 13 Chocolatey packages or Git config, and that sets up my Git config in the way that I want it to each time. So to answer your question, what I showed you today was the default Git tools that you would get if you, in terms of the interactive rebase, what I was showing you there, that editor was the default one that comes with Git extensions. What I tend to use though is I tend to use VS Code for the diff tool, and that's what these two lines of Git config are doing. They're setting up VS Code as the default diff tool for looking at diffs, but the merge tool is I use kdiff. Now, kdiff, thanks Early Dev, that's the one, yeah. Kdiff is old, right? It's an old application. There are newer, shinier applications that also do three-way merge conflicts. So I'm thinking likes of Perforce merge, of I forget the other names of them because I've got some of them on my tools. But I've grown up with kdiff 3. I know how it works. I know how all the buttons work. I know how the visualizations work. So for me, that's the one I stick with. But there are other ones out there. But what you will need to do is you will need to configure both the diff tool and, you will need to configure the diff tool and the merge tool within your Git configuration so that it's set up to do what you want. If you don't do that, if you don't do this one, if you don't do this set of configs, you'll end up with a three-way diff attempting to happen in a Vim diff tool, which is diffing at the command line, and I wouldn't wish that on my worst enemy. So you're going to want to put at least some sort of tool in there for merging. And I personally prefer kdiff 3, and that's just a Choco install kdiff 3, if you want that one. Is there a way to reset the cache? No, Brave Cobra, there's not. It's a long story. The short answer is no. But the slightly longer answer is it's going to get better. And the need for the cache is not going to be there anymore because we'll have a single distributed cache across all the web hosts, which we don't currently have. So that's the bottleneck that we're currently at. Like I say, I don't have any good answers in terms of when it'll be available, but I can say I am actively working on improving that scenario for you. P4 merge is maybe the other one that I was thinking of. Yes, thank you. kdiff 3 is nice. It comes from KDE on Linux, if I remember. I think you're right, Brave Cobra, yes. Hey, Foolish Snable. Currently have WinMerge set up. WinMerge is another one, yes. So I fluctuated originally between WinMerge and kdiff. but I settled on Kdiff. WinMerge is definitely another application that I've used in the past. Yes. Diff tool. Yep. I see the usual suspects are in chat. Absolutely, it's been a good night so far. Enjoyed it. And merge tool, source tree command. Yeah, that's. I mean, once you get into the individual commands, you're then interacting with the actual command, the actual application itself, and knowing which way that it wants the arguments passed in. But you can typically find those on the documentation site for each of the tools. Like I say, this is what it's a reasonably simple one for Kdiff because it accepts all the default and stuff. Yeah, exactly that. Yeah, there's you Google for Git against that tool and you find them. But like I said, that's what I use. So I haven't got it set up this way on my machine on this. So the VM, the machine that you're looking at just now is a VM in the cloud that I use specifically for streaming. So I don't have it set up in exactly the same way as I tend to do all my other stuff, which is what I use this package for. But essentially, it's the same operations. Everything I showed you today with the interactive rebase in that little editor, there's an add-in for VS Code that makes that part much easier because you're then within VS Code, you're kind of picking up a commit and you can drag and drop them around rather than having to manually edit each of the instructions in the instruction set. But again, it just comes down to I would encourage you to use the lower end tools to get used to what's happening, to then be able to bubble up to some of the higher UIs. So Get Kraken's got quite a nice interactive rebase UI, but it's good to know what's going on under the hood. So yeah, so hopefully that was useful. Now I think that PR would have been updated by now. I think so. Yes, it is. So let's go up to this one. I'm going to go back to where I started now. Now that we've finished that little rabbit hole. That was fun though. I enjoyed that. I'm going to say it's good to me. I'm going to approve that. I'm going to submit it. And I'm going to force the squash and merge on there and do that one. Then how many does that leave us? That leaves us with 3. Okay, so let's do the Roslinator one next. And that should hopefully kick in into a force rebase on us. As we talk automations, I am in the progress to deploy my first Cake script at work. Yay! Good stuff. Glad to hear it. Some of my colleagues like Atlassian Source Tree. I have the option turned on to show me Git command line because yes, so there's a couple of tools that do that. I used to be a big user of Source Tree, but I've kind of not resigned myself to. I got burned a little bit with the early Git UIs, or the Git GUIs, I should say, because you'd be doing something and then at some point the Git GUI would just throw its hands up and say, well, I don't actually know what's happened anymore. You need to go to the command line. So because of that kind of thing happening, I got familiar with the Git command line to how to do things. But now Git GUIs have gotten to the point where they've moved along a little bit, and they're now able to handle some of those edge cases that they weren't able to handle before. And now, in theory, I could go to something like a Git Kraken or a Fork or a I'm trying to think of some of the other ones that are out there, or GitHub Desktop. They've evolved to the point where a lot of those throwing their hands up in the air, not knowing how to do things, doesn't happen anymore. But I'm now so used to doing things at the command line and using the really lightweight Git extensions UI that I don't find I need the slightly more powerful Git GUIs now because I've got my own way of doing things. Basically, I'm old and grumpy now, and I just use the tools that I'm stuck with now because I'm happy with them. I do a lot of my Git commands in PoshGit. Yes, that's a great little add-in. I think I have that installed here. Yeah, so this what's being lit up here with the branch name here, and then if there are any differences, that's PoshGit that's coming into play there. I've also been playing with OhMyPosh, which gives similar things on. And the benefit of OhMyPosh is that it will do it on both Mac and Windows, but in the same way. So if you haven't played with Oh My Posh yet, I would it's Jan de Dobbelier that does that project. It's really good. It's really quite good. Just installed Kdiff 3. Yeah, it says in the title bar. Yes, it does. There we go. Scott Hanselman loves Oh My Posh. Yes, it's kind of. I'm not going to say it came out of nowhere because that's not true. Jan's done a lot of work on it. But it kind of sprung up because of the amount of themes and add-ins that you can do with it. I think Scott quite likes it because he can add in his diabetes monitor into the command line, so it comes up every time he does a command. It'll come up with his current. I don't know I'm just going to say percentage, but that's not the right term. But whatever his current level is for his sugar levels, it shows up in his command. It's great that you can do stuff like that. It really is. So yeah, Oh My Posh, if you haven't played with it, it's definitely worth checking out. Let me see a look at this one. It's building. So let's have a look at the yard itself. Yeah, that's fine. And then looks good to me. That and submit the review, and then we'll wait for that PR cycle to finish. 10 minutes or so. That's one way of keeping important information. It really is. It really is. I mean, I've not tweaked it to that level, but one thing that I was looking at from a Chocolatey perspective, and we never actually did it yet though, was having a segment for your currently outdated packages on Chocolatey. So anytime you did an operation here, the idea was that there'd be another segment in the command line that said you've got 2 outdated packages. The idea there was that behind the scenes, Choco Outdated would be running somewhere to then update the command line with the number of outdated packages, but because of the time that it takes to run the Choco Outdated command, it wasn't really feasible to have it work in the way that Jan had available to him at the time, and I've never followed up with it. Brave Cobra, can you run Chocolatey.server in .NET Core on Kestrel? I would have to look at the source code. I'm going to be honest with you and say no. I don't think that's going to happen. Not without. So Chocolatey.server is a very old technology that we as Chocolatey don't necessarily recommend the usage of. We would point you towards another technology for having your own internal repository. If you're looking to run it in .NET Core and Kestrel, you may want to look at find it. Baguette from Loic. So Loic was a member of the .NET team, and Loic was a member of the NuGet team, and he created a stripped down version of NuGet.org in the form of Baguette that's available as a Docker image in various different formats, and it has support for v2 feeds, which is what Chocolatey uses. So you quite quickly get up and running with this as a alternative to that, or the other mainline commercial-backed entities would be the likes of Artifactory, which is from JFrog. I'm struggling to remember what they were. So JFrog's Artifactory, or Nexus from name's escaping me as well. I'm getting tired, obviously. Sonatype Nexus. Sonatype Nexus is useful in the sense that they've got an open source lower level version that's got all the functionality you need to host Chocolatey packages. And then depending on if you want certain features and functionality, there's a commercial version on top of it. Artifactory, I don't think, has a free open source version, so it would be a paid for one straight away. But Nexus is one that I've used quite a lot in the past. So if out of the 3 of them, if you wanted the ability to have support to go with it, then something like Nexus from Sonatype would be a good one, or like say Loic's baguette server as well. I wonder what part of my message was controversial. Did I say controversial? I'm not sure what I've forgotten what I said already. Or was that a? Oh no, that was Full Snable. I'm not. I missed something. Oh, my previous message was blocked. Oh, no. If you've included a link, then that will be blocked by default. So if there was any sort of URL in it, it will not include it. It will not allow it to flow through. Unfortunately, you would need to be a moderator of the chat in order to ship or to put a link in. Unfortunately, I think Nils is capable of doing that. So if you maybe mention to Nils what you were trying to link to, he would be able to post it in the chat. I'm not in the chat, so otherwise I would have done it. Some word being filtered. Sorry, Nils. We're using Azure DevOps for hosting local chocolate packages. So the Azure DevOps one is slightly more. There's a few more hoops that you have to jump through because of the V2 and V3 incompatibilities that come happen. You can do it. It's just not as straightforward as something that just natively supports a V2 feed. Oh, I said I don't use three-way diff tools, which is. Oh, I'm not sure what's going on there, though. I can't speak to that. Sorry, I don't know what's going on there. Like I said, I assumed you were doing a URL. So I don't think I've got any chat mods running, so it's potentially something got picked up in the wrong way, or maybe three-way. I don't know. I wouldn't like to speak to that. That could have connotations. So yeah, it could be. Right, where was I? I would like to get to this last PR before I close out for the night. So that was that one. I given it approval, so it's all built. So let's kick this one. And I think that leaves me with one or two. Is it? Oh no. Another bunch of PRs have kicked off. Okay, so I'm not going to get it done tonight. Right, never mind. I'm going to come to a close because I've got more to do here than I thought I was going to have, which is unfortunate. But we are making progress. There was a nice little segue partway through that stream where we talked about interactive rebases and rebases. That was good fun. I hope that was useful, Surly Dev. Any follow-up questions, just let me know. Diff tools are the only three ways. Indeed. Thanks for the brief divergence. No problem. Like I say, I'm happy to say that I've learned what I talked through today was what I learned quite early in my GitHub career from another open source contributor. So yeah, happy to pay it forward and talk about stuff like that. It's not a problem at all. Good, cool, right. But for now, I'm going to jump off. I intend to be here. No, let me think. I won't be here next week because I'm away with the family. We're going on a long weekend. We're going away for a little bit. But I should be back the following week with more Cake add-in stuff and trying to get to a point where we can ship a new version of Cake.Recipe. So that's me for just now. I hope everyone stays safe. And one more, the word NuGet is being filtered, I think. Really? Interesting. I might have to look into that. I can't promise to look into that just now, but it could be that there are certain words being filtered. I wouldn't have. Yeah. That is very strange. Okay, I'm going to write that down on my bit of paper here. Why is the word NuGet being filtered on stream? It's an interesting one, but I'm not going to promise to look into it anytime soon, but it is on the list So I will try to get that sorted out or figure out what is doing the filtering. Because like I say, I've not got any mod or chat mods running in the background, so it must be the default one. Now I'm pretty sure there's a three-way written in it. No, a Choco repo is a NuGet repo. And okay, let me just answer that question, Brave Cobra. Yes, and sometimes no. So Chocolatey is built on the NuGet client libraries. So Choco.exe is not NuGet.exe. Chocolatey utilizes the NuGet.core assemblies. Now, the reason I'm being specific about that is because NuGet.exe has support for both what's known as v2 and v3 OData feeds, whereas Choco.exe only has support for v2 feeds. So that's where I was saying earlier about Azure DevOps. There's sometimes a mismatch in terms of functionality that's supported by NuGet.exe, functionality that's supported by Choco.exe. So in order to have a Chocolatey feed internally, you need to have something that supports NuGet v2, right? So the repository can only correct at the minute. Now we're actively working on having v3 support in Choco.exe, but we're not there yet. But we have committed to it's on the roadmap, and it is something that's coming out soon, and relatively soon. We don't commit to anything in terms of when we ship things, but we are going to support that in the near future in Choco.exe. But for now, you can only run a v2 NuGet feed with Choco.exe. So just be careful if you're using Nexus. You have the option when you create the repository within Nexus of whether you want it to be a v2 feed or whether you want it to be a v3 feed. You will need to have it selected as a v2 feed at the minute. So the repository, correct, yeah. As within the next 5 years or of next month. So all I can say is, if you were to go over and have a look at Chocolatey Choco, then I will point you at an issue where it was v3, where it's won't be able to find it now. Oh no, let's go the other way. Let's go in milestones, and let's go in the 2.0 milestone. And then in the 2.0 milestone, there will be one that says support for where is... Oh no, sorry, it's not in the V2. I'm getting ahead of myself. I think it's in this one, V3. Nope. Where is the one I'm looking for? It's going to annoy me now that I can't find it. And then I am definitely going. Where is the one I'm looking for? Here, this one. If you were to look at this issue and read near the bottom where we've had some feedback from our technical engineering manager, he states that it will be Q1, Q2 of next year. And what you'll see here, if you're following along on GitHub, is you'll see active commits and active work on the implementation of this issue, which is support for NuGet v3 within Choco.exe. So it is, like I say, it's literally actively being worked on. Where we're trying to get to, though, is making sure that we don't break something, because it is a fundamental lift and shift of the internals of Choco.exe. So it is the guesstimate, and what we're aiming for is this sort of time frame. So hopefully that answers your question. Okay, that is all I've got to go. I need to go and walk the dog. So that's what I'm going to do next. Thanks for hanging out tonight. Really appreciate it. If you've got any questions, feel free to hit me up on Twitter, or I'll be back here in 2 weeks' time if you wanted to ask me anything else. Nice. I might introduce it as a possibility for packages. Great. Sounds good. Right. Thank you very much. Talk to you later.